Hi, this is John Atack and my friend, colleague and co-worker, Spike Robinson, without whom I had not been able to function properly these last 5 years or so. So thank you very much, Spike.
Thanks, John. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure and an honor, actually.
I want to talk about the ideals of beauty that are put about in our culture. This is something that's fascinated me. In the real world, I'm a painter and an art historian, but I was kind of diverted from that career many years ago. And it fascinates me looking at the ideas of beauty, particularly female beauty, that have persisted through the arts. Sometime in the 15th century, probably it begins with Jan van Eyck in the Low Countries, that we've, for the first time, see almost photographically real depictions of human beings. It isn't in the Italian Renaissance. I'd just like to point that out. It's Van Eyck actually died before Leonardo da Vinci was born and was painting representations of the human face. If we look at a painting of his that's in the National Gallery, what on earth is it called? It's something marriage. We'll have to dig that out. I would normally that would be the top of my mind.
I'll be putting it on the screen, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's a phenomenal picture. I remember talking to one of the guides in the National Gallery in London about it, the Arnolfini marriage. And he said it was the most popular painting in the National Gallery. I think the Ambassadors by Holbein might be a contestant as well. So 2 North European paintings there, quite remarkable paintings. In the Arnolfini marriage, we see that the woman actually appears to be pregnant, but we find that she isn't. That indeed it may be a memorial painting after the woman had died, and it may not be a marriage.
Did she die in childbirth?
I'm sorry?
Did she die in childbirth?
No, she is not pregnant. It was considered. It is considered fashionable at that time for women to have rounded bellies. So let's start.
In the wrong century.
Let's start with that idea. Also, to have very high foreheads. If you look at the late medieval work, they were meant to have, that was considered an aspect of beauty. As we go through time, you can take a segment anywhere you like in history. If you look at Rembrandt, who I revere as the greatest handler of paint who ever lived. I don't know anybody who technically approaches Rembrandt's skill, having studied painting all my life. He was utterly remarkable, and he knew it. He was a tremendously boastful man, what these days is called a narcissist. But when we look at his painting, for example, of Danae, which is I've had the great pleasure of seeing it. It's in the Hermitage in St. Petersburg, and was badly damaged by a lunatic with a knife, and it took 10 years to restore. But when we look at this woman, this is not the contemporary view of beauty, yet he is selling this as very much the idea. If we look at Titian shortly before him and his nudes, the idea of what a woman is meant to look like. We then go to Rubens, and we even use that word to talk about a larger woman.
Yes.
Rubenesque. That it wasn't just the personal preference of the artist. These guys were selling paintings. Titian was selling paintings, particularly to the Spanish kings, that they would put in their bedrooms. They were erotic paintings. Giorgione, Titian's master, also. I think it's well worth looking at some of these images, and the simplest thing for us to do is to put them up on screen so that you can see them. As we go through into Victorian times, the latter part of the 19th century, she came to the throne in 1837. So after that, then we see a change. We see the introduction of the bustle for women. This peculiar. And the corset. So the waist is meant to be tiny, the wasp waist. Women in my my grandmother's time in the 1880s and the generation before would faint frequently. It was considered to be a normal thing that women did.
Died too early.
Yeah, and they would actually drink vinegar to make their skin white.
Oh yeah.
They would do all sorts of things, but they would be crushing and breaking ribs to get this look, which was meant to be the hourglass. So they would have large breasts, tiny waist, and a big bum, or buns, as they say in America. We have a totally different idea about what buns are in this country. It's a bakery sort of thing here, not at all the same as
call them rolls. We call them buns too. Hot dog buns, hamburger buns.
There you go. That's good to know. That goes into the Edwardian period before the First World War, and we're still looking at these pictures of women who are meant to be that shape. Then after the First World War, we get the flappers. And these are women who are they cut their hair short, they are flat-chested and boyish. We then, probably the Second World War, Betty Grable would probably be who's ever heard of Betty Grable anymore? She was the pinup of the US military. And we get this, again, we're still with this hourglass figure, and that goes then to Vargas and the Playboy illustrations that he did, where they're no longer real women.
Yeah.
They're actually creations, and in Playboy they would use airbrushing to make women look a certain way.
Yeah.
Going back in art history to the 18th century, when Joshua Reynolds was painting and wrote his treatise on painting, which William Blake hated and despised and critiqued in great detail. But Reynolds points out that painters of that time, they don't paint a model. That's not the way it was done. There'd be the head of one woman, the torso of another, the hands of another, and the feet of another. And he complains that finding a woman with pretty feet was the hardest job, And so these composites become this ideal of beauty. If we move into the 19th century, and the critic John Ruskin, who is the most eminent art critic of his time, he is famous. He promoted the work of Turner, the greatest of all English painters, I believe. He promoted the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. John Everett Millais ran off with Ruskin's wife, Effie Gray. I think there's even been a movie about it, which I haven't seen, because Ruskin discovered on his wedding night that Effie Gray had hair on her body. And this to him was
can't have hair.
utterly repulsive. If we then move forward a tiny bit to Edouard Manet, he caused a sensation with his, I think she's called the Olympia. And it's a woman reclining in the pose that Titian and Rembrandt and so many others had used, but she has hair in her armpit.
How dare she?
This denotes that she's a prostitute at that time in France. And that's why the outrage that he's painted a picture of a prostitute, not that she's naked, not that she has hair in her armpit, but that he's consorting with that. Or is it it could be in the Déjeuner sur l'herbe. They're painting a naked woman sitting with a load of clothed men, which is a bit of an odd idea.
Yeah, well, I've just been thinking to myself that it's interesting that it's always the beauty of women, that a man, that you go in your romantic movies and everything, the guy can be just a regular guy, but the woman has to be beautiful.
I think we could get into another and more complicated discussion about what is considered to be beautiful in men. And
oh yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying that isn't done also unfairly, but it seems more prominent that a woman is being judged for how beautiful she is, whereas a guy can just be a regular guy.
But those regular guys are people like Robert Mitchum or Ladd or Humphrey Bogart, who was a bit funny.
Well, I was thinking more cartoon sort of ones, where I'm thinking like Ratatouille.
Okay.
The romantic lead in Ratatouille. He's
the rat.
Bubble. No, no, I was thinking of the little chef that gets his hair pulled to puppeteered. But you know, he's got this bulbous nose. He ain't, you know, but the woman is beautiful. She's got almond eyes and
Yeah, and who shot Roger Rabbit? You know, I mean, look at that. You know,
you had plenty money back. Sorry, I love that song.
yeah, there's a great Sinead O'Connor version of it. So one of the few Sinead O'Connor songs I really like.
Of course, I would be playing bass, but it's just, it also comes from my own personal baggage that I grew up as an adolescent female in the United States. I was judged unfairly, and you know, all the boys would say, oh, no girl will go out with me, whatever. I was the one that no boy would go out with, because I didn't wear the makeup, because my clothes were not in the fashion. My clothes were picked more for comfort and price than they were for anything to do.
I'm built for comfort. I ain't built for speed.
And I've always been, well, I've always been a plump person, let's face it. You know, I've never met a cheesecake I did not like. But so I was not even considered in the game. I was, you know, I would hear guys saying, no girl ever pays attention to me. It's like, hi, yo, over here. You know, but I was invisible to them because I was not in that mode of beauty.
And I think,
and also I was socially awkward and weird, but you know.
And you had iridescent hair.
No. I had hair about your color.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you said it was natural.
Oh,
I think we've
fake news. You didn't hear me say that.
I think it is. I think, you know, perhaps the advantage, perhaps the only advantage of the internet and the 90% of the internet that is pornography is that those ideals of beauty that were fake, they were Vargas, they were airbrushed, they were what have you, they are coming apart as more and more people. And I'm not really sure why. I certainly wouldn't want to.
Because no matter your body type, you will find somebody that it is their particular kink.
Yes, and I think that's very important. You know, we bounced off a conversation about hard selling into this because it made me think about this. I mean, and the book in the 70s, Fat is a Feminist Issue, that we're being exploited into a type. You know, so the idea that you are meant to be like this, and this is, if you're going to keep up with the Joneses, then you will have a trophy wife who looks like this, and that beauty is a much, dare I say, broader, because that get a pun both ways with that concept, than you know, we are taught to experience. Yes. And I think that's probably pretty much what I want to say on the subject. But
I was just thinking of also that there's certain poses, there's certain I forget where it is. There was one where it was famous poses and famous iconic photos of women, but with men in those poses. But also I was just thinking of, for a while, you couldn't smile. You had to, you know, you had to scowl in order to be beautiful. It was like, sorry, but to me, what I find attractive is a beautiful smile. Actually, what I find attractive is intellect. So let's face it, you know.
And there is so much else. There is so much else. I mean, in Spain, they sell a sliced white bread called bimbo, and which made us laugh when we went there. But the idea of a vacant human being is not very interesting to some of us. But you know, gangsters in the movies have their moles. But I think the one thing about the contemporary surge of personal, you know, pornography, where people for no money whatsoever are putting their webcams on and showing themselves, that we are seeing that there are so many types, and that, you know, even, you know, the overall shape of a human being can be so different from one to another, and that some of these types are attractive to us, and perhaps natively so, perhaps naturally so. I don't know. People talk about symmetry, but when I look at the great movie stars, I see a variation from the norm. So somebody like Julia Roberts or Scarlett Johansson, Uma Thurman, they don't have that stereotypical face. You know, Julia Roberts has quite a large mouth. She has quite large breasts as well, actually, and has been known to go to award ceremonies without shaving her armpits. And what does that say about her if she was in France in the 19th century? You know?
Well, I was just thinking while I was on the dating scene for a while, and it was a long time ago, so it was message boards. And there was this one guy who, I mean, he approached me and, "Hi, baby, I want to talk. I want to talk." And, you know, finally I messaged him back to say, "Well, for one thing, I'm a little older than you." I was about 10 years old. I was older than, and also I don't shave my armpits or my legs. And he said, "You ugly, disgusting, leave me alone." Like, wait a minute.
How interesting.
Yeah. Immediate revulsion, immediate reaction to, she must be ugly, even though I'm the one who approached her.
And I mean, I remember many years ago a guy I knew telling me that he liked hairy women, and thinking, well, I don't, you know, but going away and thinking about it and going, well, okay. I remember on it's years.
We've only been told we have to do this for the past century and a half.
Yeah, and of course there are men who do it, you know. There
Yeah, for swimming and such. My theory, and I could be totally wrong, is that it makes a woman look prepubescent and thus more controllable.
Well, that theory was held by customs officers who believed that if they found images of women with shaved pudenda, that they were looking at child molesters. Well, of course, what's happened since then is that it's become typical within the pornographic industry for the pudenda to be shaved. So,
or with little designs, you know.
Yeah, a nice little
so that you know whose hooch you're looking at. Oh, bad Spike, no biscuit.
But I think you know, vive la différence, that what is out there. I think also, just on a purely medical note, that a few years ago there was a survey of people who are recovering from cardiac arrest, from heart attacks, and to the surprise of those doing this fairly large survey, people who were considered slightly overweight recovered faster than people who are considered the right weight. Now, it's not an advertisement for obesity, but it does say, how did they work out what the right weight was? And when we're told, you know, our body mass index is wrong for what? I think that what we're learning this about nutrition. There's recently been work suggesting that for some people, ice cream at a particular moment may be the ideal food. It may be just right for their microbiome, perhaps not as often as you'd like. And on the other hand, foods that are considered very healthy for some people will cause a bad reaction. So we are coming away from these generalizations into much more specific places. And I think that's very true in terms of our ideals of what is erotic or what is beautiful, that there are conventions that people buy into. And I think an aspect of growing up, dare I say it, which is you know, I'm not really interested in enlightenment or any of that kind of thing, but I see that people who want other people to approve of them or want other people to disapprove of them, there's also that, you know, I'm a Satanist. So they'll clip that bit out now, won't they? Hey, it's John saying he's a Satanist. I'm not a Satanist. I never have been, and I probably never will be. But in growing up, you come to appreciate your own tastes and preferences. I've said this for a long time about any artist, that people will say, I had this this guy I knew, and he'd actually walked up to Paul Rogers after a free gig or a bad company. No, he walked up to Robert Plant after a Led Zeppelin gig, and he said, "You think you're the best singer in the world. Paul Rogers is the best singer in the world." And it's like, this, how can you compare Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday and say this is better than that? Once you have reached the perfection of being Ella Fitzgerald or Lady Day, then you've reached that state. I think that is true for all of us, that to be an artist is to have your own voice, your own expression. And to be a grown-up is to have your own tastes and your own decisions. And I'm going to say this publicly, that I don't find the stereotypical notion of beauty in our society attractive. For me, it isn't. But it took me a long time to get to that position of just saying, this is what I like. This is what I want. And I hope that everybody who's watching this finds what they like and what they want, and enjoys themselves thoroughly and commits to helping humanity to be milder and kinder and better.
And as far as rotundness goes, I found that it's much better to be healthy.
Yeah.
Are you able to go up the stairs without panting? Are you able to walk around? You know, my husband and I are both rather large people, but he's able to go up and down a mountain. We have this regular mountain that he goes up and down all the time, Mount Philo, for those who are in Vermont. It's a beautiful little mountain. It's a monadnock. That is, it's its own stone thrust up into our valley. It's an actual geological feature. And it's a beautiful little place. And once you get up to the top, you can see all the way around our beautiful little Champlain Valley that we have. I'm blessed to live in one of the most beautiful places on earth. So we've got to natural beauty now.
Yeah, and let's say that there are a group of people called feeders who they like to watch women eating, and they like women to be obese, and grossly so, to the point where it's absolutely not healthy for them. But there's Tess Holliday, who's out there. I think she's a size 32 or something, and she's appeared on the cover of Cosmo.
She's beautiful.
She is beautiful, and she's also outspoken. She was interviewed by somebody, and she was talking about, and I must say she's a little larger than my own preference, but if you're out there, we still love you. But she was in an interview, she was asked about all of the horrific comments that she gets on Facebook and Twitter and what have you. And she said, you can't argue with stupid. And it's one of the tenets I since have lived my life by. You can't argue with stupid,
Ugly has been used as I found it, seen it not only myself, but happening to a lot of other women and probably men too, where somebody approaches you and you rebuff them because you're not interested, and they go, well, that's okay, you're ugly anyway. I've actually had somebody calling me ugly just because they did not agree with my opinion on Scientology.
We have the word minger here. I don't know if that's used in America.
No,
there's a despicable TV host, one of our top TV hosts, a man called Chris Evans, who actually used to have a contest for the Minger of the Week, and they were men who were, unusual in their looks, and people would participate in this thing. I must say that he is a Minger himself. He's a horrible man.
Okay, fair enough.
But, these are ideas we have to think about, that we've perhaps started to think about sexism and racism, but there's also uglyism. There's also this notion that somebody is somewhere on some scale here, and I'm trying to say there's no such scale.
Was it Tess Holliday's name? I always blank on her name. It's Tess Holliday, right?
Yeah. That's her.
What makes her beautiful to me is not even her body or her face. It's this attitude, this brilliance that you see in her face and her eyes that has nothing to do with the features and everything to do with, here is someone who is comfortable in their own skin, out there, confident, and not giving a damn about what anybody feels about her. That to me is more beautiful than all the eyeliner in the world.
And when you look at the incredible lack of confidence that some of the icons of beauty have, was it Rita Hayworth who played Gilda? Is it Rita Hayworth in the movie Gilda, or is it Ava Gardner?
I forget.
But I think she used to, I think it's Rita Hayworth. She was, I think, from While Married to Orson Welles. And she said, the trouble is that men go to bed with Gilda and wake up with me. So that was, she was considered one of the most beautiful women in the world. Marilyn Monroe, notoriously, was not very good in the sack, and
who now would be considered too fat by
very definitely. She's over what, and yet she is the icon of beauty for the late 50s and early 60s, no doubt.
No, but I was just thinking, actually, it was Eartha Kitt that I was thinking of, where I saw some interview where she just broke down crying because a fan approached her and said how wonderful she was, and she just had self-esteem, which is such a shame because she's still the best Catwoman. Send that hate mail. She's the best Catwoman in my mind.
My mum was a great fan of Eartha Kitt and would play her wonderful songs. And the thing about Eartha Kitt is that it's like with Mae West, that some women just have this essential sexuality about them. Is that a gun in your pocket, or are you just pleased to see me, as Mae West once put it? And the idea of having a life jacket named after you, the Mae West, I mean, what an accolade. But she had a real presence, and with Eartha Kitt, it's just overwhelming. And you look at her, and yes, by all sorts of standards, she would not be considered beautiful, but it is the personality, it's the whole person and what comes over. So anyway, I think that's enough for me banging. And so thank you very much for having a look. We're going to ask you to like and subscribe and all of that stuff, but share, go out and tell your mates. There's a strange channel.
Sign up for our Patreon. It's about time for me to do a new thank you scroll for all our new patrons. So if you want to get a scroll at the end, please.
Excellent. You can be on the scroll in the book of life. Okay, thank you very much. I'm Jon Atack.
And I'm Spike Robinson.
Cool. I think we can...
Hi, Jon here. Thanks for watching. We'd appreciate it very much if you would click like, as well as subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Every dollar helps, and we welcome new patrons on Patreon, or you can make a one-off payment with any currency through PayPal. Thanks so much.
Finding a woman with pretty feet was the hardest job.